What if understanding people became your strongest weapon? Not by reading books, not by learning magic, but by understanding how the human mind truly works. Every reaction, every hesitation, every decision people make starts inside their mind long before they speak. The truth is, the world is not controlled by the loudest voices. It's controlled by those who understand psychology, the same psychology used by powerful leaders, influencers, and strategists to shape opinions, guide behavior, and quietly take control without force. Without confrontation, this video is not about manipulation for harm. It's about awareness, because once you understand these principles, you stop being controlled and start seeing the game clearly. So watch carefully, because knowledge like this doesn't just change how you think, it changes how you see people. Trick number 1, the power of silence, approximately 2,000 words section. Silence is one of the most misunderstood forces in human psychology. Most people believe power comes from speaking louder, arguing harder, or proving their point with words. That belief is wrong. Real power begins where words end. Silence is not weakness. Silence is pressure. When someone talks, they reveal themselves. But when someone stays silent, they make the other person uncomfortable, and discomfort is where control begins. Trick #1. The power of silence is one of the most underestimated forces in human psychology. Most people believe that power comes from speaking louder, arguing harder, or proving their point with words. They think the louder they are, the stronger they seem. But in reality, real power begins where words end. Silence is not weakness. It is pressure. When someone talks, they reveal themselves. But when someone stays silent, they force the other person to confront their own mind. The brain hates uncertainty, and silence creates just that. A void the mind must fill. This void rarely fills itself with calm or clarity. Instead, it creates anxiety, self-doubt, guilt, and fear of judgment. The longer the silence, the more intense these feelings become. People start asking themselves questions they would have never asked if the conversation had continued normally. Did I say something wrong? Are they angry? Do they know something I don't? All of this mental chaos weakens their confidence without a single word being spoken. Consider how silence works in contrast to anger. When someone shouts at you and you shout back, it escalates into conflict. But if the same person shouts and you remain calm, simply observing them without reacting, suddenly their energy has nowhere to go. They begin to feel exposed, foolish, and uncertain. Silence absorbs emotion, but it also reflects it back in a way that the other person cannot control. Even as a child, most of us have experienced this dynamic without realizing it. When a parent scolds loudly, it hurts. But when another parent says nothing, just stares silently, the body reacts in a way that fear or anger alone cannot achieve. That is because silence carries authority. It communicates seriousness, dominance, and attention without aggression. The mind assumes that something critical is happening and reacts automatically in conversations and arguments. Silence works as a subtle yet incredibly effective tool. People who talk too much try to control the dialogue, but those who speak less control the room. Pausing before you speak, listening carefully, and letting your words carry weight makes others lean in toward you, both mentally and emotionally. In fact, the longer you remain calm and silent during a tense situation, the more influence you gain over the other person's thoughts and actions. It is during these pauses that the human brain begins overthinking, imagining scenarios, and often convincing itself to act in a way that aligns with your unspoken expectations. The real power of silence is perhaps most noticeable when trying to uncover the truth from someone. Direct questioning often triggers defense mechanisms, lies, or avoidance. But a simple statement like, "I already know the truth," followed by absolute silence, creates a psychological pressure that compels the other person to respond, often revealing more than they intended. Their mind races. What do they know? How much do they know? Should I explain before it's worse? Without realizing it, they start confessing or clarifying themselves, simply to relieve the discomfort caused by the silence. Silence is also a powerful weapon in arguments. Most arguments are lost not because someone is wrong, but because they talk too much. Excessive talking triggers ego, emotion, and impulsivity, allowing the other person to manipulate or dominate the conversation. Remaining silent, maintaining eye contact, and offering nothing but a calm presence, on the other hand, creates doubt in their mind. They begin to question the validity of their words and may even end up agreeing with points they initially resisted. Adding a slight smile while staying silent can further destabilize their mental balance. It sends a subtle message that you are confident, unshaken, and in control. The brain of the other person does not expect calm in the face of confrontation, and this cognitive dissonance shifts the power in your favor. Silence in social situations is equally effective. Many believe that being loud or overly expressive draws attention and commands respect, but the truth is the opposite. People who speak less often gain more influence. By listening carefully, observing the nuances of behavior, and quietly assessing the situation, they gather far more information than those who dominate the conversation. Talking reveals your own thoughts, emotions, and weaknesses, while silence lets you study the reactions of others. In essence, silence allows you to become an observer of human behavior, giving you the upper hand in subtle interactions. Moreover, silence commands respect because it conveys confidence. Respect is rarely demanded. It is felt. When your words are scarce but deliberate, each one gains weight. People begin to wait for your opinion, valuing it more than they would in a loud, incessant environment. Scarcity creates value, and silence creates scarcity. Those who talk excessively often lose the attention and respect of others simply because their words carry less impact. Silence, therefore, is not just a technique, it is a statement of presence and authority. However, silence must be used deliberately. Misapplied, it can create confusion, frustration, or unintended emotional harm. It should never be used to punish, avoid responsibility, or intimidate unnecessarily. Its purpose is to observe, control your own reactions, and influence subtly, not to manipulate cruelly. The true mastery of silence comes from controlling your internal world, your impulses, your reactions, and your emotional need to respond. When you can stay calm and silent in tense moments, you become unshakable. People cannot control you when they cannot provoke a reaction. The beauty of silence lies in its subtlety. It does not announce power. It quietly exerts it. A moment of silence makes people overthink, miscalculate, and often act in ways they would not have otherwise. The world is full of noise-loud arguments, constant chatter, and endless opinions. Amid this chaos, the silent observer stands out. Their words, when spoken, carry authority. Their presence alone commands attention. When everyone else reacts, they pause. When everyone else speaks, they listen. When everyone else tries to prove themselves, they remain still. This is where true influence begins, and it all starts with mastering the power of silence. Silence allows you to control situations without speaking, to guide decisions without commanding, and to influence without confrontation. It is a tool that the greatest leaders, negotiators, and strategists have used throughout history. From high-stakes diplomacy to everyday interactions, silence gives you the ability to observe, understand, and shape outcomes. When combined with observation, subtle expressions, and timing, it becomes nearly impossible for anyone to resist your influence. It is a skill that transforms ordinary interactions into opportunities for control and understanding. Finally, mastering silence is about restraint, patience, and awareness. It is about understanding that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is nothing at all. By cultivating the ability to remain calm, to observe quietly, and to respond intentionally, you create a presence that commands attention naturally. People will be drawn to your composure, intrigued by your words, and influenced by your mere presence. In a world dominated by noise and impulsivity, silence becomes a rare and formidable force, and those who learn to wield it effectively find that the mind of another person can be guided, shaped, and influenced all without a single harsh word or aggressive gesture. Trick number 2. The emotional Hijack. Most people like to think that every decision they make is logical, rational, and well thought out. They believe they carefully weigh pros and cons, evaluate facts, and then arrive at a conclusion. The reality, however, is very different. Human beings are emotional creatures, and the vast majority of decisions are made based on feelings rather than facts. Logic often takes a back seat when the brain is flooded with strong emotions: fear, excitement, pride, anger, and guilt. These are the levers that control behavior far more effectively than reason ever could. When someone has control over another person's emotions, they essentially hold a remote control over their mind. This is what psychologists, marketers, and influential leaders understand intuitively. They know that by hijacking emotions at the right moment, they can guide someone to act in ways they might never do under calm, rational conditions. An emotional hijack occurs when a person experiences a sudden surge of strong feelings, fear, guilt, or anger that temporarily override rational thinking. During this brief period, their decisions are guided almost entirely by what they feel in the moment, rather than by what is logically best. Politicians exploit this constantly. Their speeches are rarely about raw facts. Instead, they are designed to provoke feelings of fear, pride, or urgency. A speech meant to inspire nationalism, for instance, will appeal to pride, stirring a deep emotional response. When you are caught in this emotional surge, your mind reacts instinctively, often making choices that you may later regret when your emotions subside. This is the power of an emotional hijack, and understanding it gives you a tremendous advantage to see this in action. Consider a situation where someone wants to manipulate a group or an individual. They may create a scenario that triggers fear, guilt, or desire. A sudden scare, an unexpected compliment, or a subtle reminder of past mistakes can immediately shift behavior. People will act quickly to resolve the emotion, often without analyzing the consequences. For example, a salesperson who senses hesitation might say, "This offer ends today. If you don't act now, you'll miss out." That creates urgency, a mild panic, and the emotional hijack kicks in. The buyer's rational brain wants to compare options, read reviews, or delay the decision. But their emotions are now controlling the response, and they act impulsively, often buying immediately. This principle is not limited to sales. It applies in personal relationships, negotiations, and everyday interactions. Emotional hijack is also effective in personal influence. Imagine someone you know is stubborn about a certain decision. Logic won't persuade them, they will argue, resist, and rationalize. But if you can connect with their emotions, subtly altering their feelings about the situation, they will begin to change their behavior naturally. For instance, invoking guilt or highlighting the emotional impact of their actions can be far more persuasive than reasoning alone. The key is not to overdo it, as blatant manipulation is easily detected. Instead, emotional hijack works best when it is subtle, unexpected, and tailored to the individual's psychological triggers. A classic example occurs in interpersonal relationships. Suppose a friend repeatedly avoids helping you, despite promises. Confronting them directly may lead to defensive behavior or excuses. Instead, using subtle cues that trigger guilt can make them act voluntarily. Phrasing like, "I understand if you're busy," "I know you would help if you could," doesn't demand action but activates their internal sense of responsibility. The friend feels the emotional weight of their inaction and often chooses to respond positively. Not because they were forced, but because their emotions guided the decision. This is emotional hijack at its purest, guiding behavior by shaping the internal feeling rather than imposing external pressure. Fear is another powerful lever for emotional hijack. When a person perceives immediate risk or threat, their emotional response is triggered before their rational mind can evaluate the situation. This is why warnings, suspense, or the hint of potential loss is so compelling in human behavior. Advertisers know this well-limited time offers only a few left in stock, or act before it's too late phrases are all designed to provoke fear and urgency. Politicians, influencers, and leaders also use similar tactics by highlighting dangers, crises, or emotional stakes, guiding people to make choices that align with their intended outcome. Similarly, love and desire can hijack decision-making in subtle ways. When someone is emotionally attached or emotionally charged toward another person or idea, their decisions are filtered through that lens. People act irrationally in the name of love or attraction, often prioritizing emotional satisfaction over rational benefit. Leaders and marketers exploit this by creating connections that elicit desire, admiration, or loyalty. Once emotions are engaged, the person's ability to resist suggestions or make independent decisions is significantly diminished. Guilt is another dimension of emotional hijack, closely tied to the examples of influence seen in Trick. Number A. When someone is made to feel responsible for a negative outcome, even subtly, they often act to resolve that feeling immediately. Humans are hardwired to avoid discomfort caused by guilt, which makes this emotional response highly predictable. Leaders, advertisers, and influencers know that even indirect statements can trigger guilt, guiding behavior subtly and effectively. The danger and the beauty of emotional hijack lie in its timing. The effect is temporary. Once the emotional surge fades, the rational brain returns, and the person may reflect on their actions. However, during the moment of hijack, decisions are made, actions are taken, and influence is cemented. This is why understanding the principle is not about exploiting others. Unethically, it is about recognizing when emotions are influencing your own choices. Awareness of emotional hijacks allows you to pause before reacting, giving you control over your own mind and actions. In practice, emotional hijack is everywhere, from viral marketing campaigns to motivational speeches, from heated arguments to intense negotiations. Controlling emotion is more effective than controlling logic. Every time someone reacts impulsively, you can trace the response back to a specific emotional trigger. Mastery of this principle allows you to guide interactions, predict behavior, and influence outcomes without overt confrontation. You are no longer just a participant in the social game. You become an observer and, when necessary, a subtle guide of human behavior. Emotional hijack also teaches a critical lesson about human perception. People rarely remember the logical points presented to them. They remember how a situation made them feel. The memory of emotion lingers far longer than the memory of facts. When you influence someone's feelings at the right moment, you create lasting impact. The emotional imprint shapes future behavior, choices, and decisions. This is why great leaders and influencers focus less on arguments and more on creating experiences that evoke feelings, knowing that emotions drive action more reliably than reason. Finally, understanding emotional hijack gives you the ability to manage your own mind. Recognizing when fear, excitement, pride, or guilt is influencing your choices allows you to pause and regain control. The most powerful application of this principle is not in manipulating others, but in mastering yourself. By controlling your own emotional responses, you remain rational when others are impulsive, calm when others are chaotic, and strategic when others are reactive. Emotional hijack is not just a tool of influence, it is a key to self-mastery, awareness, and mental resilience. Trick number 3. The guilt, guilt, is one of the most powerful emotions in the human experience. Unlike fear, which forces immediate reaction, or desire, which pulls people toward something, guilt quietly works from within, shaping behavior without force. It is subtle, yet incredibly effective, because people respond to guilt not out of obligation, but out of a deep, internal need to restore balance. When someone feels guilty, they are compelled to act in ways that repair the perceived harm, reconcile relationships, or alleviate their own discomfort. This is why understanding guilt gives you a level of influence that is both profound and often invisible. The essence of the guilt trap lies in emotional reflection. Unlike direct commands or arguments, guilt does not tell someone what to do. Instead, it creates an internal narrative, a mirror in which the person sees their own actions and their consequences. For example, imagine a friend who promises to help you but repeatedly avoids it. If you confront them directly with anger, they might become defensive or dismissive, reinforcing distance. But if you subtly communicate understanding, showing that you recognize their intentions while highlighting the emotional impact of their avoidance, guilt naturally emerges. A simple statement like, "I understand you're busy, but if I mattered to you, you might have found the time," does not demand action. Yet it activates a profound emotional response. The friend feels responsibility, empathy, and sometimes shame, compelling them to act in order to restore harmony. This is the brilliance of guilt. It works without force. You do not threaten, pressure, or argue. You simply plant a seed of self-awareness, allowing the other person's conscience to guide their behavior. They act voluntarily, yet you have subtly influenced the outcome. Guilt is particularly effective because it connects with identity. People want to see themselves as good, fair, and considerate. When they realize their behavior conflicts with that self-image, the internal discomfort drives them to change. This is why leaders, marketers, and negotiators often appeal to a person's sense of responsibility or ethical self-perception. They know that guilt can override stubbornness, resistance, and even logic. Another reason the guilt trap is so effective is that it bypasses resistance. People naturally resist overt control, commands, or criticism. They do not like being told what to do. But guilt does not feel like coercion. It feels internal. The person believes the choice to act comes from them, from their desire to correct a wrong, not from external pressure. This subtle shift is what makes guilt a powerful tool for influence. In relationships, this can manifest in small ways, such as reminding someone of past kindness or expressing disappointment in a calm, reflective way rather than through confrontation. The effect is often dramatic. People who seemed unyielding suddenly become cooperative, motivated, or apologetic, all because they are responding to their own emotional compass. The mechanics of guilt are rooted in empathy and emotional awareness. When you craft statements that reflect understanding and emotional insight, the other person sees themselves through a lens they cannot ignore. They feel the impact of their actions on others, often more vividly than they would through words of criticism or logic. By holding up this mirror, you guide behavior without ever demanding it. The guilt trap leverages self-perception, compelling individuals to align their actions with the values they aspire to embody. It is a quiet, yet immensely effective form of influence. Guilt is also cumulative. Small, repeated triggers of guilt can have a long-term effect on behavior, shaping patterns subtly over time. For example, if someone frequently avoids their commitments, each interaction where you highlight, subtly, the impact of their actions adds to a growing sense of accountability. Eventually, they adjust their behavior not because you force them, but because their own conscience demands it. This principle is widely used by influencers, content creators, and advertisers who understand that repeated emotional cues, even minor ones, condition behavior over time. It is the slow, invisible hand of influence, far more enduring than immediate coercion or pressure. It is important, however, to recognize the ethical boundaries of using guilt. Misused, it can harm relationships, create resentment, or manipulate unethically. The real power of the guilt trap lies not in deception, but in awareness and guidance. By understanding how guilt influences decision-making, you can navigate interactions more effectively, communicate more persuasively, and foster cooperation without confrontation. You are not controlling someone. You are helping them see the impact of their actions and inviting them to act in alignment with their values. In practical terms, the guilt trap can be applied in countless everyday situations. At work, it can encourage collaboration by highlighting team dependencies subtly rather than ordering compliance. In personal relationships, it can inspire accountability and deeper connection without arguments. In negotiations, it can steer decision-making by revealing moral or emotional stakes that the other party may not have consciously considered. The underlying principle remains the same. Guide behavior by activating internal motivation. Rooted in conscience and self-perception, guilt is also uniquely tied to timing and context. Its effectiveness peaks when emotions are present but not overwhelming. If delivered when someone is calm but reflective, guilt becomes a powerful motivator. If delivered during anger or extreme stress, it can be misinterpreted or ignored. The key is to create an emotional state where reflection naturally occurs, allowing the person to recognize the discrepancy between their actions and their values. Once that recognition happens, the mind itself compels the desired behavior. Ultimately, mastering the guilt trap is about subtlety, patience, and understanding human psychology. It is about planting seeds that grow naturally rather than forcing outcomes unnaturally. When applied correctly, it allows you to influence deeply, guide effectively, and inspire change without confrontation. People respond because they want to, not because they have to. And in that voluntary alignment lies the true power of influence. Trick number 4. The master of car is to people believe they make decisions freely, as if the power to choose lies entirely within themselves. They feel autonomous, independent, and in control of their own lives. The truth is far more subtle and far more powerful. People do not choose in isolation. They choose from the options that are presented to them. Control the options, and you control the decision. The real mastery does not come from forcing someone to act. It comes from designing the choices they perceive as theirs. Those who understand this, principal politicians, marketers, negotiators, and influential leaders, win effortlessly because they are not fighting against free will. They are shaping it. Power, in this sense, is not about direct enforcement. It is about framing the context in which choices are made. Consider a simple example. You want a friend to go out with you, but if you simply say, "Let's go," they might refuse. Their mind weighs possibilities, obligations, comfort, or laziness. Now, imagine framing it differently. Do you want to go to Pizza Hut or Domino's? Suddenly, they feel they are making a decision themselves, but the outcome is exactly what you desired. The two options are both under your control, yet they experience autonomy. This is the essence of being a master of choice. By designing the options, you guide behavior without anyone realizing it. The person believes they acted independently, but the real power has always been in your hands. Mastering this technique requires understanding the psychology of perception. People resist direct orders, commands, and pressure because autonomy is psychologically satisfying. No one likes to feel coerced. But when you give the illusion of freedom, their resistance vanishes. They choose what you want them to choose, yet they feel it was their idea all along. This subtle manipulation is what separates ordinary influencers from true masters of human behavior. It is not about dishonesty. It is about creating an environment where decisions naturally lead to your desired outcome. In practical terms, this method is used everywhere, from advertising to politics. Brands have perfected it with offers like buy one, get one free, or choose between package A or package B, both of which include a bonus. Consumers feel empowered because they are choosing, yet every option leads to the company's intended result. Politicians use similar tactics by framing debates, questions, or policies in ways that guide public opinion, creating a perception of choice while steering collective decisions. The secret lies in the careful design of available options, the context, and the framing of consequences. Mastering choice also works beautifully in interpersonal relationships. Imagine negotiating a team project or trying to get a group of friends to agree on a plan. Rather than telling them what to do or arguing about what is best, present multiple options that all align with your objective. This technique engages their rational thinking while subtly guiding their conclusion. It is a form of soft control. You are not imposing, but steering. The person's sense of agency remains intact, their ego is satisfied, and your desired outcome is achieved with minimal friction. The power of this technique grows exponentially when combined with observation. By understanding what motivates someone, what they value, and what they fear, you can tailor the choices in a way that feels natural to them. If you know someone fears confrontation but values social approval, you can design options that guide them toward a decision they feel proud of, while quietly ensuring it aligns with your goal. This is why choice manipulation is often invisible. It works because it respects human psychology rather than fighting against it. The real mastery of choice lies in subtlety. It is not about forcing someone to pick what you want. It is about controlling the frame, the context, and the perception of freedom. When someone chooses within the boundaries you've created, they believe they are independent. Their mind feels satisfied, their ego feels protected, and yet they are acting within the outcome you designed. This is influence at its purest, quiet, invisible, and incredibly effective. The illusion of freedom is often more compelling than freedom itself. People do not want to feel trapped or forced, even if the alternative is better for them. They want controlled freedom choices that preserve their sense of autonomy, while subtly nudging them toward the best or desired outcome. This is why the master of choice is always several steps ahead, anticipating decisions, framing contexts, and designing options that guide behavior while leaving the person feeling empowered. The power lies not in confrontation, not in coercion, but in strategic, thoughtful design of perception. In real life, mastering choice transforms interactions, negotiations, and leadership. You no longer need to argue, convince, or pressure. Instead, you observe, understand, and present options that naturally lead toward your desired outcome. It is a strategy that works in personal relationships, business deals, marketing campaigns, and even everyday social situations. When executed correctly, people walk away thinking they made their own decision, yet you have quietly guided every step. This is the essence of influence, shaping behavior without force, preserving autonomy while steering action, and becoming a true master of choice. Trick number 5. The reverse trope of human mind is wired to desire what it is told it cannot have. This simple truth underlies the power of the reverse trap, a technique that allows you to influence others without direct confrontation or force. When someone is prohibited from doing something, their natural instinct is to do exactly that. Curiosity, ego, and the thrill of defiance combine to make them act in ways they otherwise might avoid. Understanding this mechanism allows you to guide behavior subtly, creating compliance through the illusion of resistance. The reverse trap is not about coercion. It is about letting psychology do the work for you. Imagine a friend who refuses to help you with a project if you ask directly. Instead of pushing, you hint, "This is too difficult. I don't think anyone can manage it." Suddenly, their pride and desire to prove themselves kick in. They step up voluntarily, driven by internal motivation rather than external pressure. By implying limitation, you trigger the very behavior you seek. This works because people instinctively react against restrictions to assert their independence. In essence, the reverse trap converts resistance into cooperation without overt effort. The principle is even more powerful in everyday situations. If you tell someone, "Don't watch this video," the immediate curiosity in their mind will make them want to click and watch it. This is why reverse psychology is so effective in advertising, parenting, and persuasion. It engages the ego, activates a sense of challenge, and compels action through subtle psychological pressure. The mind rebels against being controlled, and in doing so, acts exactly how you intended, but feels entirely autonomous in the process. The reverse trap also works in negotiations, leadership, and social influence. By framing a choice or instruction as something limited, forbidden, or unlikely, you provoke a desire to defy or excel. People naturally resist authority in small ways, and this resistance can be harnessed strategically. The key is timing and subtlety. If the hint is too obvious, the effect fails. If it is too weak, the mind may ignore it. A well-crafted reverse trap is almost invisible, allowing the other person to feel empowered while guiding them to your desired outcome. This technique is dangerous in its simplicity because it can bypass rational thought entirely. The other person acts before they even realize why. Their ego, curiosity, or competitive nature drives their actions. In essence, you are letting the natural impulses of the human mind do the work for you, creating influence without confrontation, debate, or force. Mastering the reverse trap is about recognizing the impulses of others and carefully designing situations where they will act voluntarily in the direction you intend. Video CON now that you've explored the 5 dark psychological tools: emotional hijack, guilt trap, master of choice, and the reverse trap. You understand how influence works on a deeper, almost unseen level. These techniques are not magic. They are the science of human behavior, used by leaders, marketers, and influencers to guide decisions and shape outcomes. The true power lies not in manipulation for selfish gain, but in understanding the mechanisms of the mind, both others and your own. As you apply these tools, remember that influence is a responsibility. Each interaction, each choice, each subtle gesture has consequences. Used ethically, these principles can improve communication, strengthen relationships, and empower you to lead with confidence. You are no longer just a participant in the social game. You are a student of human psychology, capable of observing, guiding, and responding with precision. The key takeaway is simple. People are not purely logical. Emotions, perceptions, and subtle cues shape their actions far more than facts or force ever could. By mastering silence, reading emotions, reflecting guilt, designing choices, and using the reverse trap wisely, you gain the ability to influence deeply while maintaining integrity. So now, it's your turn. Observe, practice, and reflect. Apply these tools consciously, not to dominate, but to guide. Become aware of your own impulses, recognize the emotional currents around you, and you will discover a new level of control over interactions without ever needing to raise your voice. Influence is not about overpowering others. It is about understanding them so profoundly that your presence alone shapes outcomes. And that, more than anything, is the mark of a true master of human behavior.